The air was thick with smoke and fear on the edge of a distant galaxy. Deep inside a black market space station, aliens from many worlds gathered in a cold, dark chamber. It was the slave market. Lights above the stage flickered, buzzing like insects. As a line of chained beings stood quietly, eyes full of pain, among them was a young alien girl named Vera. Her skin was light blue, her hair long and silver, and her eyes shimmered like glass marbles. She was thin, weak, and scared, her wrists bruised from tight iron cuffs. Vera had been sold before, moved from ship to ship, and now she was up for auction. Once again, whispers filled the room. "She's rare," someone said. "Look at her eyes," another voice muttered. "She won't last long, perfect for torture games." Someone laughed cruelly from the shadows. Vera heard it all. She stood still, but her heart pounded like a drum inside her chest. She had learned not to cry, not to speak, not to hope. Buyers never cared about tears. The auction began. One by one, the slavers pulled each captive forward, showing them off like broken toys. Then the announcer shouted her name. Lot 47, female, healthy, obedient. Vera was pushed to the front. Bright lights blinded her. She lowered her head, trying not to look at anyone. Then he walked in, a human middle-aged, quiet, and wearing a long black coat. He stood taller than the others. His face hard to read, no expression, no words, just eyes that studied the auction without blinking. Vera froze. Her body trembled. She had heard the stories. Humans were cruel. Humans were monsters. They used alien girls for dark pleasure, then threw them away. And now one of them was staring at her. The announcer noticed him. "Ah, a human buyer. Welcome," he said with a fake smile. "Interested in the girl?" "A rare species, very obedient, no marks." The human stepped closer. He said only 2 words. "How much?" Vera's legs shook, her vision blurred. No, please not him, she thought. Anyone but him. The deal was quick, no questions, no inspection. The human paid in full and signed a datapad. The slavers unlocked her cuffs and shoved her toward him. Vera stumbled, nearly falling. The man caught her arm, steadying her. His grip was strong but gentle. She flinched anyway, expecting pain. He didn't say anything, just nodded at the slavers, and turned away, walking toward the exit with her beside him. She looked back at the market one last time. The lights, the noise, the pain. It was all behind her now. But she didn't feel safe. She felt worse, because now she was alone with him. Human buyer, a man who had just purchased her like property. He led her through metal corridors, past security drones and alien guards. No one stopped them. No one cared. She was nothing more than cargo to them. They reached a small docking bay. A ship waited inside. Not a warship, not a luxury vessel. Just a simple freighter, old, scratched, but still flying. The door opened with a hiss, and they stepped inside. The air was warmer here, quieter. He guided her to a small seat and pressed a few buttons on a panel. Engines roared to life. As the ship lifted off, Vera stared at the floor, silent. She didn't dare speak. She didn't dare ask what he wanted. She was sure she already knew. Pain, fear, and death. That's what buyers wanted. The man finally spoke. "You're safe now," he said quietly. Vera didn't reply. She didn't believe him. How could she? Buyers always lie. He walked to a shelf and picked up a water bottle, then handed it to her. Her hands shook as she took it, but she didn't drink. He noticed. "I'm not going to hurt you," he added. Still no reply. Vera just stared, heart racing, in her mind. She repeated the same thought again and again. "He's a human. He bought me. I belong to him. He'll hurt me when he's ready." He turned away, giving her space. Vera looked at his back, so calm, so casual. She didn't understand it. She didn't trust it. But somewhere deep inside her heart, a strange feeling sparked. Something she hadn't felt in a long time. Confusion, hope, fear mixed with wonder. Could this human be different? She didn't know, but one thing was clear. Her story wasn't ending here. It was just beginning. She was bought by a monster, or so she thought. Asterisk, the ship drifted through silent space like a ghost. No noise, no alarms, just the gentle hum of its old engines inside. The air was still. Vera sat in the corner of a small sleeping pod. Knees pulled to her chest, eyes wide open. She hadn't slept. She didn't trust the bed, the walls, or the human who now sat in the pilot's seat. He had given her food, a blanket, and water, but not a single order, not even a lock on the door. That scared her more than chains ever did, because monsters didn't always growl. Sometimes they waited. She watched him from the shadows. His name, she had overheard, was David. He didn't speak much, just stared into the stars like he was chasing ghosts out there. Vera's hands itched for something sharp, a weapon, anything, because if he tried something, she needed to be ready, even if she died fighting. That night, when he finally stepped into another room and the lights dimmed, Vera moved, quiet like a whisper. She searched the small ship. A rusted storage panel opened with a creak. Inside tools. She found a thin blade, dull but enough. Her heart pounded as she slipped it into her sleeve. She had only one plan: run. She crept toward the ship's side hatch. Her fingers danced across the control pad, copying what she had seen earlier. A soft click. The door opened slightly, cold air brushing against her skin. She took one step out onto the loading ramp, then another, just a little more. Suddenly, a voice behind her. "Where will you go?" Her blood froze. David was standing there, no anger in his voice, just calm curiosity. She didn't turn around. She gripped the blade tighter. "Anywhere away from you," she whispered. "You think I'm going to hurt you?" He asked, still calm. She laughed bitterly, her voice shaking. "You bought me." There was a long silence. Then he said something strange, something that cracked a part of her heart open. "I bought your freedom." Vera turned her head slightly. "You're lying," she spat. "Humans don't save, they take." David stepped forward slowly, not threatening. "Not fast, then go," he said softly. "I won't stop you." She blinked. "What? No chains, no traps, no punishment, just those words. I won't stop you." But her legs didn't move. Her body stood still, her mind racing. No one ever let her go before. No one ever gave her a choice. Suddenly, flashing lights filled the bay. Security drones. A patrol ship had picked up the open hatch. 3 metal bots hovered down, red eyes glowing. One scanned her, then sounded an alarm. "Unauthorized slave detected," the drone buzzed. "Prepare for retrieval." Before she could move, one shot a net in her legs. She fell hard, the blade slipping from her hand. Pain jolted up her arms. The drones moved in fast. But David stepped in front of her. "No," he barked. "She's under my protection." The drones paused, confused. David raised his ID chip. "I have legal ownership. Release her." The bots hovered for a moment, scanned the chip, then backed off. One last beep, and they vanished into the dark. Vera looked up at him from the floor, breathless. He didn't yell. He didn't hit her. He knelt beside her, helping untangle the net. "Why?" she whispered. "Why save me?" He looked her straight in the eyes. "Because someone should," he said. Vera stared at him, not knowing what to say. No one had ever said that before. She sat quietly as he guided her back inside, locking the hatch behind them. This time, she didn't reach for the blade. She didn't run again. And for the first time in years, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, she wasn't a slave anymore. Not yet free, but not alone either. The stars outside looked the same as always, but inside the ship, something had changed. Vera sat at the edge of the bed, her hands still and empty, the blade now forgotten in a drawer. She had stopped trying to escape, but that didn't mean she trusted him. She watched him move around the ship, fixing wires, checking maps, boiling water, like a quiet old worker, not a buyer of slaves. It made no sense. He hadn't shouted. He hadn't touched her. He hadn't even locked the doors again. He just existed, and that scared her even more, because monsters she understood. But this kindness, It was confusing that night. When he sat at the table eating alone, he looked up at her. "Hungry?" he asked. Vera hesitated, then nodded. He pushed the bowl toward her without a word. They ate in silence. No one looked at the other. But the silence wasn't heavy like before. It felt lighter, still full of questions, but without chains. When the bowl was empty, he stood up, walked to the window, and said something that made her stop breathing. "I had a daughter once," Vera blinked. The words felt like ice water. "What?" she said quietly. "She was about your age," he continued, still staring out the window. "Smart, brave, always asking questions." Vera said nothing. "She was taken," he said, "during the war by slavers, just like the ones who sold you." His voice didn't break, but his hand, resting on the window's edge, was trembling. "I searched for her," he said. "I never found her." Vera's chest ached, like something was pressing on it from inside. "I'm sorry," she whispered. He nodded. "I'm not here to own anyone," he said. I couldn't save my daughter, but I thought maybe I could save someone." She didn't move, didn't speak, but her heart did something strange. It softened. For the first time, she looked at him and didn't see a buyer. She saw a father who had lost something too. She stood up slowly, walked to the window beside him, and asked what was her name. He looked at her, surprised. "Lena," he said. Vera repeated it in her mind, Lena. The girl he couldn't save. The silence returned. But it wasn't cold now, it felt shared, like two broken pieces recognizing each other. He turned to her and said, "You're free to leave." "You know," Vera raised her eyebrows. "I don't own you," he added. "There's a communicator in that drawer. It can contact help. Any station nearby." She stared at him. This was it, the moment most captives dreamed of. A way out, a real one. No tricks, no lies, but her hands didn't move. Her feet didn't walk. She stood there, frozen. Not by fear, but by confusion. "You're not what I thought," she said finally. He smiled a little. "Neither are you," he replied. That night, Vera didn't sleep with one eye open. She slept. And in her dream, there were no chains, only stars. Asterisk, the body can heal. But the mind remembers everything. Even when the stars are quiet and the ship is warm. Even when no one is chasing you anymore. The fear still whispers, and for Vera, it screamed in her sleep. It began on the fourth night. David was adjusting the engine settings when he heard it. A scream, sharp and terrified, echoing through the hall. He ran to her room. The door was open. Vera was thrashing on the bed, her face wet with sweat, hands clutching the blanket like it was a shield. No, don't take me again," she cried in her sleep. "Please, not again." David knelt beside her, unsure what to do. He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder and said softly, "Vera, it's just a dream." She shot up like lightning, eyes wide, chest heaving. Her fists were raised like she was ready to fight. But then she saw him, David. Not a slaver, not a monster, just him. She broke. Her arms fell to her sides and tears rolled down her cheeks. She turned away, hiding her face. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I thought it was them." David didn't speak. He just sat beside her on the floor. "You don't have to explain," he said. "Not to me," but she did. Not because he asked. Because for the first time, someone was there who listened. She spoke in a quiet, broken voice. "They used to wake us in the dark, shine lights in our eyes, pull us out one by one." David closed his eyes, fighting the anger rising in him. "They never called us by name," she continued. "Just numbers, just cargo." He listened to every word, not as a captain, not as a savior, just as someone who cared. Vera hugged her knees again, like she did on that first day. "Sometimes I forget who I was before them." David reached into a drawer and pulled out a small mirror. He handed it to her. She looked at herself, really looked. And for the first time in a long while, she didn't see just a slave. She saw a girl, tired, hurt, but alive. "You're not cargo," David said firmly. "You're not a number." She nodded slowly. holding the mirror close like a fragile memory. Later that night, she walked to the control deck where David was sitting again. Staring out into space, she stood beside him in silence. Then asked, "Do the memories ever stop?" He looked at her, eyes sad but kind. "No," he said. "But they get quieter when you're not carrying them alone." Vera smiled. Just a little. It wasn't bright. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and for her, that was enough. Pain teaches you how to survive, but purpose, that's what teaches you how to live again. Vera stood alone in the ship's observation bay, watching the stars move slowly like distant lanterns. She wasn't shaking anymore. The nightmares hadn't disappeared, but she had something now she didn't have before. A choice. Behind her, David was studying files on a glowing datapad. Charts, records, names, numbers, all stolen from the slaver networks he had tracked for years. Vera walked over and looked at the screen. Rows of alien names blinked in blue, a list of victims. She felt her fists tighten. "These are others like me," she said. David nodded. "I've been collecting data on the trade routes, the buyers, the stations that turn away and pretend not to see." "Why?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "Because it didn't stop. When I lost Lena," he said, "and it won't stop unless someone makes it stop." He looked up at her. "Someone like us." Vera sat down beside him, her voice quiet but steady. "I want to help." David raised an eyebrow. "You've been through enough. I've survived enough." She corrected. "Now I want to fight." He didn't argue, he just handed her a second datapad. "All right," he said. "We start with the black belt markets. They trade in silence. Pay off every system to look the other way." She scrolled through the images. So many scared faces, so many eyes that reminded her of her own. "We go in as buyers again," David said. "Blend in, gather data, and get out." Vera's eyes locked. On one girl's picture, a small alien child, eyes full of terror, labeled Property 312. She pointed at it. "This one." David looked. "Her sales in 2 days," he said. "Station N9. Vera stood up. "Then let's get her out." David smiled, not a wide smile, just a small nod of respect. That night, the ship's cargo hold became something new, not a prison, but a plan. Vera practiced using tools, hiding her fear behind focus. She learned to hack security cams, studied maps of the station, and memorized the code signals David used in emergencies. "You learn fast," he said. "I had to," she replied. When the day arrived, they dressed in dark coats and boarded the station like ghosts. No one noticed them, just another buyer and his silent assistant. Inside, the walls were too familiar. Gray halls, flickering lights, and that same awful silence that lived between pain and fear. They walked past cages. Vera didn't blink. She couldn't. If she showed weakness, they'd suspect something. At the center of the market, the child from the photo sat in a cold glass cell. Her knees were pulled to her chest. She was shivering. Vera's steps slowed. She wanted to run to her, to smash the glass and grab her hand. But David whispered, "Not yet." They handed the slaver a forged ID chip. The man scanned it, grunted, and nodded. "Clean record," he muttered. "Take her." Vera held her breath as the cell door opened. The child looked up, her lips trembling. Vera knelt down slowly and whispered, "We're not going to hurt you." The girl didn't move at first. Then she reached out. Vera wrapped her arms around her gently, standing up and walking back toward the exit, with David beside her. Just a few more steps, then an alarm. A second slaver had scanned their ship ID. "It's fake," he shouted. "They're spies." The room exploded with noise. Guards ran in from every side. David grabbed his blaster, firing a warning shot that hit the ceiling. "Run!" he shouted. Vera held the girl tight and sprinted. Lasers flew past her head. David covered them, step by step, until the ship doors opened and swallowed them whole. They blasted off seconds before the market sealed down. Inside the ship, breathing hard, Vera sat with the child still shaking in her lap. "You're safe now," she whispered. "You're free." The child looked up, confused. Just like Vera once had, and Vera smiled. Not because the danger was over, but because the mission had begun. Asterisk. Some places never leave your mind. No matter how far you run, no matter how free you feel, the moment you return. They crawl under your skin like poison. For Vera, that place was Station Arc 4. The same station where she had once stood in chains. The same station where she had been sold, and now she was going back. Not as a slave, not as property, but as a weapon, too. Weeks had passed since they rescued the child. Vera had barely slept since then. Not because of fear, but because of the fire growing inside her. David had noticed it too. The way she trained longer, worked harder, studied the slaver's files late into the night. "You don't have to do this," he told her. "I do," she answered. "Then I'm going with you," he said. Their plan was simple, but dangerous. David would stay close, posing as a buyer again. Vera would go in alone, dressed as a fresh captive for auction, a silent shadow planted deep in enemy walls. She had memorized every hallway, every face, every escape route. But even she knew, once inside, anything could happen. Still, she didn't flinch, because some scars need to be walked through before they can heal. The slaver's voice echoed across the main auction hall. Lot 91. Female, rare species, highly cooperative. Vera stood still, chained, her head bowed just like last time. The same lights above her buzzed. The same whispers slithered through the crowd. But this time, her heart wasn't pounding in fear. It was counting down. David stood in the audience, face cold, hand near his communicator. Her signal would come soon. Then everything would fall apart. A cruel-faced slaver approached the stage, leaning close to her ear. "You'll fetch a good price," he sneered. Vera slowly looked up, and for a moment, just a second, he paused. Something in her eyes didn't match her posture. Not fear, not weakness, but focus. Before he could react, Vera's cuffs snapped open from a hidden lock code. She moved fast like lightning, grabbed his own stun rod from his belt and struck him in the chest. He dropped without a sound. Chaos exploded around her. Guards drew weapons. Buyers ran. David shouted into his comms. Now, hidden EMP chips activated across the auction hall, killing the lights and jamming the cameras. Smoke bombs went off near the exits, distractions to confuse and blind. Vera ran through the crowd, unlocking cages as she passed them. "Go," she told the captives. "Run now." Some hesitated, most followed. Sirens screamed through the station. One of the guards lunged at her with a shock stick. She dodged, rolled, and knocked him out with the back of her hand. Not the scared girl anymore. Now she was something else entirely, a force they couldn't control. David met her near the east gate, covering her back with sharp, clean shots. More captives poured out behind them. Vera stopped only once, at the main computer. She inserted a data spike David had built, downloading everything, names, routes, buyer records, enough to expose the entire network. They reached the ship and launched into space as enemy crafts scrambled behind them, but it was too late. They were gone. Inside the ship, Vera sat against the wall, breathing hard, her arms bruised, her face streaked with dirt. David walked over and handed her a cloth. "You did it," he said. Vera shook her head slowly. "No," she whispered. "We did." She looked at the stolen data now glowing on the monitor. "This isn't just revenge," she said. "This is a map to every cage they built." She once woke up to chains. Now she wakes up to choice. The stars outside her window still shine the same. But Vera is not the same girl who used to stare at them from behind bars. Not anymore. 6 months had passed since the Arc 4 mission, since that night when she stopped running from the past and started running towards something better. The stolen data they had recovered led to hundreds of slave raids being shut down across the galaxy. But more importantly, it inspired others. Voices once silent had begun to speak. Fighters began to rise from the ashes of fear. And at the center of it all was her, Vera, The small freighter that once carried only pain now served as a sanctuary. Ship with no chains, no cells, only open doors and soft beds. Rescued children, former captives, even a few ex-soldiers had joined her and David. They called themselves the Free Echo, a name David said came from her. Because once, her voice was a whisper, now it echoed across systems that once ignored. The cries of the broken. David stood on the bridge, older, quieter now, but lighter somehow. Vera stood beside him, taller, sharper, a calm fire in her eyes. "You've become more than what they feared," he said, watching her guide the crew. She nodded. "Because I remembered who I was before they took everything." He smiled, proud. She smiled back, stronger. A small alien child tugged at her arm. Vera turned and knelt down. "Yes," she asked gently. The child whispered, "Are we going back?" "To the cages." Vera shook her head. "No," she said softly. "We don't go back. We break them." The child blinked, surprised, then smiled for the first time. That night, Vera sat alone in her quarters, a small pendant in her hand, a gift from David, a tag with one word engraved on it. Lena. She had never met David's daughter, but somehow she felt like a piece of her lived inside this mission, inside her own journey. Maybe they both saved each other. Maybe that was the point. The stars were still cold and endless, but now they weren't empty. They were full of names, stories, lives that deserved more than silence. Vera looked into that endless night and whispered one final truth. "I was bought. Like property, I was treated like nothing. But I am not a slave. I never was. And this time." She wasn't speaking to herself. She was speaking to every cage still out there. Every broken voice still waiting for a reason to rise.